Welcome to another episode of 90 Minutes of Wisdom, a channel dedicated to helping you expand your knowledge and develop a more successful and peaceful mind. My guest today is currently studying to become a counselor specializing in concurrent disorders. She has overcome many difficult challenges in her life, including alcoholism, anxiety, and bulimia. Day to day, she continues to deal with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Please welcome to the show the resilient and brave Meaghan Webster. Welcome, Meaghan.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So nice to see you. I'm going to start off by saying happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's super nice of you to do this on your birthday of all days. Just, it's supposed to be a day where people give you gifts, but you're sharing your gifts. So that's super kind. Good karma. Okay, so why don't we just start off with telling the listener a little bit about yourself and your challenges and kind of where that all began for you.
Well, my road to recovery has been a fairly long one. Most of the things that I've struggled with have been about a 15-year time frame. As a child, I had pretty bad anxiety, dealt with some depression when I was in my early teens. Later teens turned into an eating disorder. That was a fairly serious medical condition on and off for many years. I required hospital admissions multiple times as an inpatient. And that kind of stipulated my life for most of my adult life up until 2017. Same kind of time frame for my alcoholism. Prior to this year, I probably would have called it alcohol abuse or being a bad drinker, but that's really not the case. I did go to a detox center in January, which kind of changed the shape of my recovery path. And I'm currently 2 months sober, and I'm really proud of that.
Wow. Nice. Congrats on that. That's
Thank you.
Good stuff. I look at it from my, perspective. I know some of it's like hereditary, right? Am I correct in saying that? Sometimes it's just being your genetics.
It is. Many people in my family have struggled with alcoholism and addiction. I wasn't really aware of that until last year without my immediate family. Both of my parents struggled with alcohol actually kind of before I was born. My mom was hospitalized in an institution when she was about my age. My dad started struggling again after 17 years when my parents split up. So my firsthand experience with alcoholism was actually my father. I've seen both sides of it. I've seen it from other people, also friends and family. And then, of course, it translated into myself when I had enough awareness and I was brought to light for me to get some help.
Yeah, nice. So that's, hopefully you can break the pattern. So one day if you have kids, they don't have to,
Absolutely. It's a big pushing force for me. Knowing my dad is sober is obviously a great motivation. And my mom's in long-term care for dementia, early onset dementia, and the doctors consider it alcohol-induced. So those kinds of things are pretty powerful pushes forward to find recovery, however that looked. And I'm really grateful again to be part of a program that's giving me a different way of life, hopefully permanently.
Fantastic. What, if you could go back and if it's hopefully not too personal, what started it? Like, how did you start on that path? It was like with the wrong friends, or just the first time you tried alcohol, you were like, oh my God, this is so good, or like what? Like,
I used to call myself like a weekend warrior. The community that I kind of grew up in, everyone was kind of like that, so it didn't seem to be much of an issue. However, I've always been, not a great drinker. My drinking kind of persona was a blackout drinker, so that was a consistent trend, but I, for whatever reason, believe that that's what everyone kind of went through. So that started super young, like back in high school. I started in the restaurant industry around the same age, 14, 15. I started out in breakfast places, and by 18 I was working in a bar. Left home super young from my parents' divorce, so I was 15 when I left. So I was living with someone 15 years older than me. She lived a party lifestyle, so I was kind of introduced to that. And then working in bars for me was like so exciting, and like, everyone rewards themselves at the end of the day by coming into the restaurant and having a drink or multiple drinks and cheers and those sorts of things. So I was introduced to that lifestyle, and not knowing, my issues, I just kind of thought that was normal. So again, not a lot of people drank like me, but I kind of would find the people to party with. Like there was always seven nights a week to go out with. And I consider those people my friends for a really long time. Like whoever they were, wherever we were going. So it was an exciting lifestyle. I think that was very attractive to me. Not really having that great of a family dynamic for most of my teens, unless I was not doing well with my eating disorder, I didn't really have a lot of connection there. So living life very self-willed and like self-reliant. So I kind of just had like my own way of doing things and I just assumed that I was doing them right. However, in my experience looking back now, when I can reflect, it wasn't exactly healthy. And reflection's again like a great motivator to understand where I've come from and what my life's like today.
Yeah, I can only try to imagine like what that would be with the alcohol and the eating disorder, because I know for myself, if I'm going to drink, which is rare, I don't drink too often, but if I'm going to drink, I make sure I eat a lot, because there's,
Mm,
you know what I mean? If I eat a small meal, I'll get, the alcohol will hit me way harder, and I'll get
yeah,
more likely to have a hangover. So I couldn't imagine like having those challenges, and especially they were like overlapping, right?
yeah.
Challenges, yeah.
So definitely not something I recognized until more recently, but I'm considered anorexia type 2, so I'm anorexic and bulimic. Originally, it was bulimia, and it transitioned into anorexia. So the not eating and then drinking the way that I did, it just kind of catapulted the alcohol to like a different level than like when you kind of mentioned most people. Like you would have dinner and then you might have a glass of wine. Like I wouldn't eat for a day or so, and then I'd go out and power drink at a bar or with friends. So it was only natural that I got to the kinds of states that I did by not fueling my body, in any way, shape, or form that was, appropriate.
Mm. And for the listener, could you, Megan, please describe like what it is exactly, like in anorexia and bulimia?
Absolutely. So, a bulimia eating disorder involves purging or throwing up. So, either keeping your food for a little while and getting rid of it after a meal. Where anorexia generally is not eating and over exercising to control your weight. Both of them are to control your weight. They're just kind of different facets. Like I said, it was originally bulimia for me, which transitioned later on, like 8 years later, into anorexia. And I couldn't tell you, the reasons behind that, but it just seemed to kind of, take different steps, and it changed its shape over time.
Hmm. Crazy challenging times. It's so nice. Like you look so healthy and well and
Thank
great.
you.
So, how did you start to identify that this was a problem and that you needed help? And like, who did you go to? And kind of how did that happen?
Well, originally, I didn't think I had a problem. So the first time I needed a hospital admission was 2009. It was kind of forced by my parents, by my work, that I had a problem. To be honest, people thought I had an issue with drugs because I had lost such an amount of weight in such a short amount of time. So that was kind of questioned. And then I just kept telling people, like, I'm eating differently, I'm doing things differently, secretly knowing what I was doing. So in 2009, my parents had kind of stepped forward and said, look, like, you really need to get help here. And they started speaking with my family doctor. My family doctor recommended me to an eating disorder clinic in Mississauga through a hospital program. When I started working with them, it was supposed to be an outpatient. So, like, I would go there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, for therapy and meals. And by the time my hospital admission was coming up to start, I had actually lost so much weight that I needed to be an inpatient. So, I was medically unstable enough to be out on my own terms. So, that was my first inpatient stay. I was there for 5 months. I did fairly well in the program, but in denial completely that I had a problem. And as a people pleaser, I did everything they wanted me to, and I had relapsed within days by leaving because I thought I had a better way.
Like, what causes you to do that? I mean, like, is it like a little voice in your head, or do you look yourself in the mirror and you think, I want to be thinner? Like, what is it that actually causes it?
I think I'm still trying to work through all the points of that. Some things that have definitely come up over time is a loss of control. So I couldn't control, my family dynamic. I couldn't control the fact that I failed in school. I couldn't control the fact that my relationship didn't work out, but I could control my weight and shape. I guess another part of it later on did definitely come to how I looked. I became very obsessive with numbers and numbers on the scale and calories. So again, form of control over something that nobody else could touch. No one could change that opinion for me, and no one could be like, "Oh, that's a wrong number." Like it was all kind of for me in my own head. Yeah, so definitely later on, it was like a weight and shape thing, like any kind of increase in weight would really send my anxiety flying. But the control thing is definitely the common factor for all of that for me. I know for a lot of others, it can be a multitude of things, someone calling you fat when you were younger, even like on a sports team, like you can't be on this team unless you're this size. Or, for example, I did some modeling and I was told I wasn't thin enough, wasn't tall enough. So those sorts of things, like outside sources, do play into it, and they kind of did in my life. But like I said, for me, it was a very personalized experience of a form of control.
What message would you give to the listener right now, and maybe a young lady like yourself that is struggling with eating disorders in particular? What would you tell them?
If you're struggling with eating or your weight and shape, or you're not keeping food, or you find yourself over exercising, talk to someone. It's like the hardest thing in the world, but whoever you feel like completely safe with, whether it's your parents or a doctor or a friend, try and start that conversation. I'm not really eating that well, or I've actually, my pants don't fit me anymore and I'm not really sure what happened, or I'm obsessively thinking about food. It takes a lot of self-awareness to have those kinds of conversations. And I think the other thing I would try and suggest is be open-minded when someone comes to you that loves you and cares about you, about what's going on, because they're seeing it from an outside perspective, and it's generally a weight loss, a severe weight loss that people notice. And people with eating disorders have a lot of body dysmorphia, something called like a monster mirror. So you really don't see yourself for what you actually are. So just try and start talking about it. And if you can't talk to someone about it, maybe start journaling about it, like some way, record, how you're doing or how it's going. Because when it does get out of hand, from my experience, it gets medically, I mean, I almost died from kidney, liver, and heart failure from my eating disorder. So it becomes a very serious problem and it can happen really quickly. So if you're questioning yourself on any level, just try and find a way to start talking about it, start a conversation.
Okay, cool. Thank you. It's really good. Is there a certain website or certain number or something that you would recommend that you know of, or would it be more just go to their local, like their family doctor or something like that?
It is kind of localized. In Ontario, there's only 3 centers that are public that take eating disorder patients and have inpatient programs. That's Credit Valley, Toronto General, and I believe, I don't know what's a hospital in Ottawa. I'm not sure what the name of it is. NEDIC is for the States, and NEED is for Canada. Your family doctor would be able to guide you probably the best way in programs that would be kind of within the hospital programs in your area. And it is a little bit specific and kind of hard to get into certain areas. Like in the GTA, my longest wait for a hospital stay was 9 months. So doctors are kind of the easiest avenue in, and also emergency rooms. They're always like super helpful to catapult you in there if you need medical assistance on any level.
Mm. Yeah, one of the sources. So there's like a chemical source, right? There's always in your brain. There's certain things chemically, and then there's predispositions, which is a
Hmm.
certain percentage as well, like DNA and stuff like that, hereditary. And then there's things like like social media or just like unrealistic images of people, and a lot of that's changing right now. But a lot of it's still there, where you're everyone like a Kardashian, let's say, right? There,
Hmm.
if you don't look a certain way, just get as much plastic surgery until you do look like a certain way that you think looks good or something, I guess. So a lot of it comes, I think, to acceptance of who you are and self-love, right?
Absolutely.
So do you want to maybe speak to a bit about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, the media still does portray, the skinny girl being the most successful and, with the most wonderful family and kind of that white picket fence idea. What I'd like to express is your body holds the most important things, your heart, your mind, and your spirit. Your body is something that holds all the important pieces, but it doesn't define who you are. Numbers don't define who you are. um, Accepting yourself for where you at is an incredibly key component for loving yourself, self-love, self-respect, and nourishing your body is so important. I mean, a car doesn't go without gas. You can't expect you to fully function properly if you don't have the proper proper fuel. So accepting yourself where you are and how you look, and knowing that's not what makes you a human being is difficult in today's day and age. But it does take a lot of self work, to dig deep down inside and think about the important things, your family, your school, your career, the sunshine outside, whatever it takes to kind of get you out of self. Because so often we get down on who we are, what we look like, what we do, and we don't remember, what the better things in life are. It's not a number on the scale.
Cool. That's well said. Yeah, because I mean, we are, infinite light beings or spirits, like,
Hmm.
having a human experience, right? But if you only get one, like you can't. If you kind of destroy your car, you could buy another one, right? You could be like, you
Hmm.
know what, I'm going to trade this one in. I'm going to get, but like we just have one, right? So I think it's so important. I kind of see a lot of good progress, but I also see some negative progress, regress in a certain way where there is a certain amount of, I think, that's a healthy weight, and I think that sometimes now we see it going overboard, where it's like it's oh, it's great to be overweight, but it's not great to be overweight. It's actually, that's also having a tremendous effect on your heart. So how
Yeah.
to show people that there's this like healthy spectrum, right? You don't have to be like
Hmm.
this and you don't have to be like that, and there's different body types, and that you have to accept that. But I think that
Hmm.
also people understand it kind of went too. I just noticed in the last maybe year that there was a lot of things going too far, like, oh, like it's so beautiful, she's super overweight, she's so beautiful. Like, like I get the self-love part, but I'm also like, it's not really that healthy for you, and
Hmm.
cholesterol and stuff like that. So how do you think, what do you think the right message would be to young ladies?
Well, it's trying to get that balance, right? That life balance, whether, it's healthy eating, your weight and shape, your mindset, believing, you're beautiful however you're at, I think is amazing. Again, discussions with, a doctor, a nutritionist, just even going online and looking at like a food guide. It will give you a guideline to healthy foods, how many calories you should be taking, like your body mass index. And that is specifically to you, your age, your height, and your gender. So things like that are medically proven that if you follow them, you will be the weight you're supposed to be. Again, the media portrays positive and negative, and I can appreciate, the post about, bigger is beautiful, and I also very much believe in that. But it is very much about balance, essentially, finding what fits for you and what's right for your body, as an entirety.
What do you eat right now, Megan? What is your diet like? How do you have a very strict now, like?
No, no, I'm an everything eater. I do eat at least 3 meals a day. I do have to say, on days where I've had some bad anxiety or depression or something kind of life upsetting, I would totally admit that I eat less than your standard. But I think that's a pretty normal thing. If you're sad, you might not have, your dinner, which is way different than my eating disordered world where that would be months at a time. So I eat as I feel, as I want. If I'm hungry, I have something. I love to cook. I have been in the restaurant industry for most of my life, and I've got a chance to work with a lot of great chefs. So I love playing around in the kitchen. So I'm trying to think, like yesterday, I had my boyfriend made me an omelet and a croissant and avocado, and for lunch we had. It was football day, so we had chips and chocolate and coffee, and then for dinner we had pasta and salad. So there's something called intuitive eating and mindful eating. My girlfriend Meg talks about that a lot in her support group, and it's eating the way that you feel as you can and as you want to. So it's essentially fueling your body for whatever you're doing that day, whatever your needs are.
That's cool. Okay, thanks for sharing that. That's interesting. Because for myself, I'm like, I changed maybe my diet quite a number of years ago, and I keep changing it, making slight modifications. Sometimes I'll go like more vegan for a while, and then I'll go heavier on
Hmm.
this or that. And I do a lot of intermittent fasting. That's been for many years.
Hmm.
So I'll eat my first meal sometimes at noon, sometimes at 4 o'clock, 5 p.m., 7 p.m., depending on the
Hmm.
day and what I'm doing. And I find that intermittent fasting has a lot of advantages, and especially I tried a few. You do 24-hour or 36-hour fasting. Again, it's for someone that like has, I wouldn't suggest any of these things for anyone that has kind of an eating disorder or some kind of challenge with it
No.
already, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. But I find for myself that intermittent fasting has been huge. I think a lot of it, and which you alluded to earlier, is getting that help. I don't think you, some of it is too much. You can't do it yourself, right?
Yeah. Last January, that brought me to an epic 5-day relapse where I actually ended up suicidal. Um, and that's the first time in my life that that's ever happened. Pretty scary stuff. I've lost several to suicide at this point in my life, very close people. And I prayed for the first time in a very long time. And I made it through the night. And the next day, I made a decision to go to detox. And that experience gave me 5 days inside this facility that I never expected myself to be in. Actually, 15 years prior, I had taken my father there. So it was kind of like this weird, like, remember when, I can't believe this is happening. But I wasn't upset with it. I was really willing to get help at that point because my drinking had never been as bad as it had been that week. So I was terrified. So it was no longer the gift of desperation. I was terrified for my life. And I've always known I've had a purpose. I'm just not sure what that was. And even now, I still kind of question, where I'm at and what I'm doing. Over the last year, I've had 2 other relapses. Those are things that I used to get extremely mad at myself for and continually beat myself up to the point where, I would hide from people. I've always believed in progress, not perfection, but that's a life that I very much live now today. My last 2 relapses have taught me a lot about myself and that I still don't know a different way of living and that I do need all kinds of avenues of recovery. I make a joke that I'm an octopus a lot of the time, like to keep myself balanced. I need like all the things. I work with a psychiatrist, and that's still 1 day a week. We started working together in 2012, and we still work together to this day. Medication is also part of my recovery, so that helps combat my anxiety, my depression, and insomnia. I pray. I'm a faith forward person these days, so that's been another huge component of my recovery. Meditation as well. That's fairly new. That's kind of been since March, and I'm trying to find different ways of meditating. I really appreciate when I can be outdoors. I do a lot of like I am affirmation meditations. Talking with other people that are like me has been one of the most helpful things for me. So when someone else talks to me about a problem that they have, I'm very, very public on my social media about my experiences, what I go through, good days and bad days. I try and be as honest as possible. Honesty has been a huge turnaround for me to let out all the secrets of my life that I've lived. And that's like my eating disorder and my addiction, because they very much look similar if you look at them kind of for face value, what they did to my life, what they took and what it took for me to get out of them, because both of them, like I said, have kind of been a long road. So today I accept all help on any level, accepting all help at any point in time, and just having really honest conversations, when I'm not doing well, when my depression's bothering me, when I've had a PTSD flashback. I have safe people in my life now that I can really express those things with. Yeah, so those have been kind of the key factors that turned around my drinking. Again, 2 months ago, I did have a slip or a relapse, and it's the first time I didn't really get mad at myself. My psychiatrist actually really kindly reminded me that over the last year, I've drank 8 days compared to the year before when I was a 24/7 blackout drinker. So progress, not perfection, is a big part of, the way that I live. I believe that, the pain that I've experienced and are completely lessons in blessings. And that's why I can say that I'm really proud of where I'm at today.
Amazing. Wow. Like that's fantastic. There's so many good points you made. One is the challenge of, of COVID. I mean, they said that alcohol sales went skyrocketed, right? And I
Hmm.
remember here in Quebec we have the SAQ here, and there was lineups. I mean, the first thing was lineups of like 100 people on everything. And I just thought it was so interesting. I was like, wow, really? there was more lineups for alcohol than there was for groceries, right? People were
I
like,
believe that.
first let's get the alcohol, then let's worry about the food.
Mhm.
And that was like, and it was just so I could imagine for all these amazing people going through these challenging times like yourself, and then you have like a lockdown, so then you're like, like it's like, well, no one's gonna see, and I'm alone, so I
Yeah.
could, just basically, and so that must have been like in and of itself like a massive,
Mhm.
massive challenge. So good for you. Congrats on getting through that. For me, it was this. It's gonna sound so silly, but there's this movie called War of the Roses, with very old movie with Danny DeVito, and he's trying to quit smoking, and he's explaining it. And it's probably, I don't know, it just happened to work for me. And he took a cigarette, and he's trying to quit cigarettes, and he said he took a cigarette, and the next cigarette he was going to smoke, and he just looked at that cigarette and he said, "If I don't smoke this cigarette, I'll never smoke again." So he put it in a glass case, and he just said, "Okay, like that's it. As long as I don't smoke this one, okay, you know what? I'm just not gonna have. I'm not gonna think about. I'm gonna quit forever. It's too much pressure, right? And it's kind of a thing where you're like mentally. I know for a lot of things, like let's say, um, oh, I'm not gonna eat. And you start thinking about food and not eating. You're gonna want to eat so much more, right? So
Mhm.
it's gonna bring that
Yeah.
to you. So I just kind of found that, okay, if I wanted it, and this is like for many, 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 I think still to this day, I have like a small amount of weed just in my drawer, right? Because I always kept it there to relieve the pressure, to know that it was there.
Yeah.
Which I don't recommend anyone
Mhm.
else do this, but it worked for me. So the fact that it was there meant that I didn't have to panic or freak out that I couldn't have it, so I never needed it. I know that I'm never going to smoke that but for years. I mean, that's like 17 years. It's still sitting there because if I
Good for
didn't
you.
have it, yeah, if I didn't have it, I would kind of like, oh, like I get like anxiety about it. And then having it there and never
Mhm.
needing it
Yeah.
was something else. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there might be different methods that work for different people. One of that,
Absolutely.
is like you were saying with faith. A lot of people, find Jesus or find like some solace in religion or in just in faith.
Mhm.
And meditation, like I have a video, please check it out, called meditation three ways to meditate. Check that out, you're really going to like it. And I do have a video called progress over perfection, which
I love it.
yeah, which I truly do believe in. And it's that thing, is being like really that self-love and forgiveness. So like my big things,
Mhm.
my big three are gratitude, forgiveness, and love. And forgiveness, I think forgiving yourself, just really forgiving yourself, and just let it go. So you have a little
Mhm.
slip and whatever, and I think it's making those tweaks and seeing what's my trigger, and what could I replace. So instead of this, like I had a very close friend of mine, and he quit cigarettes about, now it's probably about almost 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, and he replaced it with guitar. Kind of similar to what you were saying, that his father had died from, basically his father was very, very heavy smoker and died
Mm.
from complications due to that. And he saw his father pass away, and then himself, he still didn't quit right away, and then he had this kind of crazy attack on his lungs where he was hospitalized, and he was just like, okay, it's done. To get to your point, is why they say it's so difficult eating disorders, because we have to eat. You can never say like I quit eating. That's, I'm done with eating. No more food ever. Right? It's just out of my mind. So you can do that with drugs. You can do that with alcohol. Okay, just I'm never
Mhm.
gonna drink again. That's fine. What advice would you have somebody, especially with either with eating disorder or with that, what like you've learned so much, and like you're way stronger, you had to have those falls to get back up on the horse, metaphorically. So what tools do you use, what things, what kind of advice, and I know you said some before, but what personal things do you use right
For me, the first thing I do is call somebody. That's my first go-to, and sometimes I can't pick up the phone still because I still get that, like, "Oh, I shouldn't have that urge to drink," or, "Oh, why am I feeling this way?" So sometimes it's just a text, "Hey, I'm thinking about drinking," and it doesn't mean that I am, it's just the thought, but I'm not allowing that thought to perpetuate in your head, for an hour, all day, kind of stop the process. That's a big part of it. Meditation is a huge part of that as well. So reach out to someone and then do something else, whether it's the dishes or, you go for a walk, call a friend. A lot of it'll be different for everybody.
now? The last thing I wanted to ask you is just about, you're in school and what you're studying right now to be a counselor, if you want to talk about how that's like kind of brought you full circle to here.
Absolutely. So, in my past experience, I haven't been very successful at school. Drinking was a huge factor in that. Not really caring and having too much of a foggy mind, and drinking being on the forefront. It was way easier to make money in a bar or a restaurant than it was to go back to school. This is now my fourth college since I was 21. I've not completed a program as of yet. This one's a little bit different for me. I spent about 8 months looking for a program that combined both of my issues. Being in and out of the medical system for so long now, the common themes seem to be that they could help one but not the other, or they could work on the eating disorder but not the depression. So it was very kind of compartmentalized. And until I got to there was one hospital program. I need to be clear that there are programs out there that do concurrent disorders and they are integrated systems, but they're rare. It's still a systematic problem. And I speak to a lot of people in recovery from many different issues these days. And the common theme seems to be you'll start with your family doctor, but then there's that 9 month wait list, or you'll start with a therapist, but you only get to see them once a month. So there's kind of those holdbacks that will stop people from really working on their recovery or being able to work on their recovery, which is really frustrating and it can kind of be a deterrent. I have that experience. So I found this program through CAMH in Toronto, and it's actually through the University of Toronto. It's a concurrent disorders counselors program that's kind of multifaceted. That can be depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, eating disorders, addiction, substance use, you name it, any kind of illness that's concurrent. So it means it happens again and again and again on a different timeline. And both of my illnesses are that. So being in recovery from both of them now and having the experiences I've had, good and bad, has kind of given me a desire to want to help others that have struggled with things like this, that has been kind of on their life timeline, that it's kind of kept cropping up, and finding solutions to help people find an integrated program. So I'm not sure where my course will take me. I would imagine after this, I'll probably take a social sciences or maybe an addictions counselor's course. There's actually no such thing as an eating disorder counselor program in anywhere that my research was in all of Ontario, Canada, anywhere online. So concurrent disorders was the closest thing that I could find that was kind of a broad spectrum to help kind of all the illnesses I've experienced and understand as much as I can. So I do hope to help others in multiple ways. That's why I post the way that I do to social media. That's why I invite open conversations. That's why I'm talking with you today, and that's why I'm doing this course.
Okay, that's beautiful, Meaghan. Thank you so much. That's great. I love that you have a big heart. You're very brave, and that you want to help other people that have been through your situation. And I think that my opinion is once you finish this course that you're doing, I don't I think you're ready. Right now. I mean, I think you could help so many people right now.
Thank
Because
you.
you have that real experience, right? Something in a
Hmm.
textbook that you can read. And I learned a lot of different things in my life, and I've been blessed. And some of it is just like, okay, it's in a book, it's not in practical. It's very different when you get out to the real world, right? And
Yeah,
you have that real world experience, so it's not like, oh well, in this example A, Jenny drinks, and
exactly.
so you should do this. No, it's like you've lived there, you've lived it. And
Hmm.
I think that once what makes sense to you, but my advice to you would be to start right away. The world needs that. And I would
Thank
start that
you.
website and coaching, and get those things, because you don't know. As you said, you came close, like you said, and so serious. It's so sad to like suicidal thoughts and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Imagine the amount of people you could help, and then maybe take that one girl or guy off that ledge of that cliff, right? So I think it's such important work,
Absolutely.
and I think that it's one of those things. It's one of those blessing in disguise, curses, pain to
Hmm.
whatever, right? If you didn't go through all that, you wouldn't be able to relate and to help people through that, because you've been there every step of the way. So I think that's amazing. I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and I think that I would love to have another follow up with you when you're done and through the course. And I think that you'll be very very successful at helping many many people. And I wish you like constant strength, and I hope you stay. I have so much confidence in you. I think that you're going to
Thank
be
you.
you're going to be just okay, and you're going to get through this challenges. And you seem very intelligent, and you seem very strong, and it's every time you get beaten down, it's like you get a little tougher, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
you got that grit and you got that strength. So with that, on the last thing, just wanted to ask you this last question. Is there anything
Mhm.
else that you'd like to share with the listener, something important to you or something people don't ask?
Absolutely. I know recovery can look a lot of different ways, and something that kind of really helped me through, like, in my really dark times, I followed some strong people on social media, and I watched them succeed in one way or another, and however your recovery looks, however long the road is, however difficult it is, no matter what steps you took to get here, be proud of where you are. Whatever experiences you've had in your life, painful or positive, are lessons and blessings, and they've made you who you are today. So if you're struggling or think you can't make it to recovery, you absolutely can. Like, I was one of those lost causes, and I can stand here today saying that my life's changed a lot by finding my own way of recovery. And however that looks for you, be loud and proud about it. People need you.
Okay, well said, Megan. Well said. So with that, I'll say thank you and wish you a successful and peaceful mind, and just beautiful, beautiful message. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Okay, bye, Megan. Thank you.
Bye.